Finally, the experimenters examined real insects. To see if leg adhesion might also play a role in the walking coordination of real flies, they put polymer drops on the flies' legs to cover their claws and adhesive pads, as if the flies were wearing boots, and watched what happened. The flies quickly began to use bipod-like leg coordination similar to the one discovered in the simulation. As introverts are thinking, they reach back into long-term memory to locate information. An introvert will often compare old and new experiences when making a decision, which slows the processing down but leads to carefully thought-out decisions. This means that introverts have an active dialogue with themselves and usually walk around with many thoughts in their minds. University of Adelaide researchers have uncovered fundamental new information about the malting characteristics of barley grains. They say their finding could pave the way to more stable brewing processes or new malts for craft brewers. Published in the Nature publication Scientific Reports, the researchers discovered a new link between one of the key enzymes involved in malt production for brewing and a specific tissue layer within the barley grain. Another virtue that both propagate is that the present is meant to be enjoyed to the fullest. It is no use fretting about the past, for it cannot be undone or overturned, and no use pondering too much about the future, for it remains unseen. The day being thought about may never dawn on you. The ultimate service, however, remains the one done for your fellow man.
Researchers have rebuilt a human thymus, an essential organ in the immune system, using human stem cells and a bioengineered scaffold. Their work is an important step towards being able to build artificial thymi, which could be used as transplants. Whether flu or coronavirus, it can take several days for the body to ramp up an effective response to a viral infection. New research describes how different cells in the immune system work together, communicate, and in the case of cells called neutrophils bring about their own death to help fight off infections. The findings could have important implications for the development of vaccines and antiviral therapies.
As a child, you might dream one day of becoming an astronaut and, the next day, of becoming a ballet dancer. The possibilities are endless. Eventually, this wealth of choice is whittled down by external circumstances and internal interests. Similarly, precursor cells and early embryos make a series of stepwise decisions governed by external forces and internal factors to generate the diverse array of cell types present in adult organisms. Nell says that, in order to seek protection from their furry foes, birds actually prefer to build their nests in plots of swamp with a resident alligator. In fact, in one study a graduate student planted fake alligators. The birds seem to prefer to build nests close to them. Where there's a water source, there are alligators, so it's sort of this mode of protection around these colonies. The global collapse of frogs and other amphibians due to the amphibian chytrid fungus exacerbated malaria outbreaks in Costa Rica and Panama during the 1990s and 2000s, according to new research. The findings provide the first evidence that amphibian population declines have directly affected human health and show how preserving biodiversity can benefit humans as well as local ecosystems. If you have a chronic disease such as heart disease, diabetes, asthma, or back or joint pain, exercise can have important health benefits. However, it is important to talk to your doctor before starting an exercise routine. He or she might have advice on what exercises are safe and any precautions you might need to take while exercising. Much of what people do today disguises a desperate search for meaning, the result of the crisis of belief that has become a major problem of the Western world. On the one hand, the elites and their high culture suffer a loss of confidence, and aimless consumerism is widespread. On the other, powerful new myths arise, as with sporting heroes. A ubiquitous neurotransmitter that carries signals between brain cells, dopamine, among its many functions, is involved in multiple aspects of cognitive processing. The chemical messenger has been extensively studied from the perspective of external cues or deterministic signals. Aboriginal people are believed to have arrived as early as 60,000 years ago, and evidence of Aboriginal art in Australia dates back at least 30,000 years. Several states and territories had their origins as penal colonies, with the first British convicts arriving at Sydney Cove and a ubiquitous neurotransmitter that carries signals between brain cells, dopamine, among its many functions, is involved in multiple aspects of cognitive processing. The chemical messenger has been extensively studied from the perspective of external cues or deterministic signals. A study found that the research funded by the soft drinks industry had different results from research funded by other sources, and went on to suggest that they may have been biased by the research itself. The whole point of the scientific methods is to ensure the research results are not influenced by the source of funding. Tasmania is a large and relatively sparsely populated island off the south coast of Australia. The island is of particular interest to natural scientists, who go there to research the unique wildlife. Tasmania has, for example, 12 species of bird that are not found anywhere else in the world. The scientists say this is the first documented instance of nectar that attracts a particular animal assistant being produced outside of a nectary. In fact, the observed nectar bleeding might actually be an early system that evolved to include the nectaries found in other plants today. The Roman state was tested almost to destruction by the defeat at Cannae by the Carthaginians led by Hannibal, and according to the historian Polybius, it was only what he called the peculiar virtues of the Roman constitution that allowed it to survive this crisis. English colonies emerged along the eastern seaboard for a variety of reasons. People, primarily men, originally migrated to Virginia to find gold and silver to make a quick profit. After it became evident that there were no precious metals in the area, men came to Virginia to start cultivating cash crops like tobacco. Sleep behavior is also known as sleep disorder. People with sleep disorder often talk or walk in their sleep. They are not aware of what they are talking about or where they are going. There isn't any serious effects on body in general, but it may be connected to the mental health. People with childhood traumas, unspeakable problem, or depression are the ones with different sleep behavior. Reserve requirements are the proportions of the deposits that banks must keep on hand and are not allowed to lend out. For example, if the reserve requirement is 10% and you deposit $100 in a bank, the bank can lend $90 of that $100 to someone else. But it is not allowed to lend the remaining $10. Having the same dream again and again is a well-known phenomenon. Nearly 2/3 of the population report having recurring dreams. Being chased, finding yourself naked in a public place, or in the middle of a natural disaster, losing your teeth or forgetting to go to class for an entire semester are typical recurring scenarios in these dreams. As introverts are thinking, they reach back into long-term memory to locate information. An introvert will often compare old and new experiences when making a decision, which slows the processing down but leads to carefully thought-out decisions. This means that introverts have an active dialogue with themselves and usually walk around with many thoughts in their minds. Nell and his colleagues took to the Everglades at night, hunting for gators near and far from nests. You have to use a spotlight, and you see the little demon eyes shining out of the marsh. They lassoed the gators, pulled them into the airboat, and took blood samples and body measurements. Participating regularly in physical activity has been shown to benefit an individual's health and well-being. Regular physical activity is important in reducing the risk of chronic diseases, such as heart disease and stroke, obesity, diabetes, and some forms of cancer. The National Physical Activity Guidelines for Adults recommends at least 30 minutes of moderate-intensity physical activity, preferably every day of the week, to obtain health benefits. The power of the sun, wind, and sea may soon combine to produce clean-burning hydrogen fuel, according to researchers. A team integrated water purification technology into a new proof-of-concept design for a seawater electrolyzer, which uses an electric current to split apart the hydrogen and oxygen in water molecules. Neural networks are some of the most important tools in AI. So far, they run on traditional processors in the form of adaptive software, but experts are working on an alternative concept, the neuromorphic computer. In this case, neurons are not simulated by software but